The Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4 has proven to be its most action-packed chapter yet, and a lot of that comes down to the incredibly powerful threats that our favorite heroes are facing. They say that every hero is only as good as their villain, and while that may not necessarily be true 100% of the time for Marvel, it's undeniable that they have leveled up their villain game in Phase 4. From street-level crime bosses to near-omnipotent time travelers, there's certainly a wide range of foes for the MCU's new class of superheroes to go up against, but who is the most powerful one that's appeared so far? Let's rank them and find out. Kingpin's power level is interesting to discuss because there were some fundamental changes made to him between his debut in Daredevil and his return in Hawkeye. While the former show featured a much more realistic and gritty take on Wilson Fisk, the latter's version was definitely heightened to fit into the MCU, demonstrating an almost superhuman strength and durability, as well as generally seeming more aggressive. Despite this, Kingpin still got his butt soundly kicked in Hawkeye's last episode, losing everything he'd built and ending up on the receiving end of a beatdown from the Hawkeyes, as well as his own adoptive niece. There's nothing wrong with making changes to Kingpin's character to make him fit better in Hawkeye, but the problem is that a lot of his more realistic aspects are now gone. He's now working with the buffoonish and comic relief type tracksuit mafia, as opposed to the more professional gangsters he associated with in Daredevil. The fact that the tracksuits are so incompetent reflects poorly on Fisk, and it's really a wonder how he managed to hold on to any sort of influence at all with them as his enforcers. And unless Marvel has some sort of big comeback plan for him in the near future, he's gonna have to stay at the bottom of this list. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier introduced audiences to the Flag Smashers, a group of outsiders who were dedicated to uniting a world without borders. While they were a pretty ragtag group, the Smashers did have two major advantages. First of all, they had sympathizers around the world who were willing to open their doors to them and conceal their movements from the authorities. And secondly, they were able to get their hands on the Super Soldier Serum, which granted several of them enhanced abilities on par with Captain America. The Flag Smashers' use of the Super Soldier Serum raised their threat level to the point where they actually did pose a serious threat to Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes. But just as this was happening, they were kneecapped by John Walker, who took the serum and publicly took out one of their members. Their plans began to fall apart as their leader Carly Morgenthau became reckless and unfocused, with her instability ultimately leading to the group's downfall at the hands of the new Captain America. As much as I love this guy, you know, I'm something of a scientist myself, I can't really put him too high on this list. We're ranking everyone based on their power levels here, not their meme ability, and Green Goblin's, well, he's not weak, but he's certainly not as strong as a lot of Phase 4's other villains. Spider-Man has an absolutely iconic rogues gallery, and it was really nice to see an MCU interpretation of his greatest foe to close out Tom Holland's Homecoming trilogy. But at the end of the day, the biggest threat to our heroes in No Way Home was Peter himself. With that being said, Gobby's still definitely a major threat. He's incredibly strong, fast, and durable thanks to the Oscorp serum he infused himself with in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And of course, those pumpkin bombs in that glider are always awesome. It should also be noted that he nearly managed to take out Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man once and for all, in a moment that gave fanboys everywhere a mini heart attack. But above all, we can't forget his most evil crime: assembling a team of 5 villains and then not putting in one more to complete the Sinister Six.
It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind.
Wrong answer!
Taskmaster is Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of a Russian general who leads the Black Widow program. After she was injured as a child in an explosion caused by Natasha Romanoff, her father rebuilt her with cybernetic parts that allowed her to mimic any fighting style she saw. Dreykov trained her to become his personal assassin and gave her a protective suit to wear while on missions. Thanks to her father's training and resources, Antonia is a very formidable foe. She's able to consistently keep Natasha and her allies on their toes with her ability to copy and replicate fighting moves, utilizing the fighting styles of several other Avengers against them. Additionally, the fact that she's been brainwashed makes her even more dangerous because it means that she won't stop pushing forward until the mission is completed. Antonia's equipment and abilities easily put her on par with Natasha, who is one of the best physical fighters in the entire MCU, but I do think that, like, the Hulk would probably curb stomp her. Puny Taskmaster. It was Agatha all along. Sorry. Agatha Harkness's greatest strength lies not in her infectiously catchy theme song, nor her dark magic, but in her ability to manipulate others. Throughout the entirety of WandaVision, Agatha, or Agnes, essentially gaslights Wanda Maximoff into becoming a villain, all while in the guise of the wacky neighbors sitcom character type. By the time she reveals her true nature, it's far too late for Wanda to undo a lot of the things she's done. Everything Agatha does is in service of her goal to steal Wanda's magic, and it's this greed that proves to be her undoing. She was already an incredibly accomplished sorcerer with a thorough knowledge of dark magic, but no, she just had to steal some more. Luckily, she makes up for it all with her secret superpower to connect to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Whoa, the Darkhold! They had the book in that show too! That means it's canon! Even though it looks completely different. Right guys? Right? Wenwu is the leader of the Ten Rings, the worldwide crime syndicate that have been responsible for a number of key events in the MCU. As if that wasn't enough, he also has a set of iron rings that grant him superpowers. And if all that wasn't enough, he's also played by Tony Leung in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. God, he's handsome. The Ten Rings, the objects, not the organization, can be used in many different ways, including as projectiles, as a whip, and as a shield. In combination with Wenwu's already formidable martial arts skills, they make him nearly unbeatable in combat, to the point that he's able to wipe out entire armies using them. But while the rings do make him a truly formidable foe, it's arguably his organization that really makes him legendary. He has followers all over the world, spreading his influence and helping him to maintain his terrifying reputation over thousands of years. And even though Wenwu met his demise during the film's climax, it's almost a guarantee that those followers will continue to spread the legend of the Ten Rings for years to come. While he won't go down as one of Marvel's most memorable villains, there's no denying that Crow is incredibly strong. Unlike the other entries on this list so far, he's not human, which already gives him a big boost in terms of power level. He and the rest of his species, the Deviants, were created by the Celestials to hunt down the apex predators of any given planet, but they eventually became the apex predators themselves and started wiping out all life. Obviously, this means that the Deviants are all incredibly destructive and vicious, but Crow rises above the rest of his species. During the events of Eternals, he manages to take down both Ajax and Gilgamesh, absorbing their abilities and gaining sentience for the first time ever for a Deviant. The ability to think only increases Crow's danger level as he develops a vendetta against the Eternals for their war against his kind. In the film's final battle, he attacks the team and nearly manages to absorb the abilities of Thena, but she pretty quickly takes him out of the equation for good. Crow was strong, sure, but he's nothing compared to the movie's true villain. Yes, it turns out Ikaris is the actual main threat of Eternals, having decided to carry out the Celestials' plan to destroy the Earth. Not only is he the tactical leader of the Eternals, he's also the most powerful of them all, and not even the combined might of the rest of his team is able to stop him for good. In addition to the abilities that all the Eternals share, like super strength and near immortality, Ikaris also has some unique abilities like flight and laser vision that basically make him the MCU's answer to Superman. The movie demonstrates Ikaris' superiority by having him absolutely demolish pretty much every fight he gets into, against both the Deviants and the other Eternals. The others aren't even able to beat him during the final battle, with Ikaris ending up leaving the Earth on his own terms and flying into the sun. In addition, he manages to orchestrate Ajax's demise at the hands of Crow, a feat that's not easy thanks to her healing abilities. In terms of raw strength, Ikaris may be one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's mightiest characters, but he's held back by his love for Cersei. This love ended up being the one thing that stood in the way of him being able to see the Celestials' plan through, and there's no amount of power that could ever manage to resolve a failure that big. At the end of the day, Ikaris' tale is a tragic one, because if things had gone just a bit differently, he could have been one of the MCU's greatest heroes. When Ultron was first introduced to the MCU in 2015, he was no slouch. Nearly indestructible vibranium body, incredibly devious artificial intelligence, legions of robot drones. I mean, he was a scary guy, or robot. But he didn't have the Infinity Gauntlet. Luckily for us, What If Season 1 decided to bring this terrifying hypothetical to life, with the robot, well, shall we say, acquiring the gauntlet from Thanos and using it to take over the world. This on its own shoots Ultron like right to the near top of the list. I mean, you're not going to see the Flag Smashers doing something like this, right? But as if that wasn't enough, the gauntlet alerted Ultron to the existence of the multiverse, and he decided that one world wasn't enough. He was going to take over them all. Ultron proved to be such a threat to the multiverse that the Watcher, in an unprecedented moment, had to step in and interfere in its events. It is impossible to overstate how dangerous What If's Ultron was, because if he would have had his way, then there would have been no more multiverse. So what could possibly top an evil robot that wants to take over the multiverse? Well, how about the being that controlled the multiverse in the first place? The season 1 finale of Loki introduced viewers to He Who Remains, an ancient variant who created the timeline that the MCU had existed in so far. As a confused Sylvie and Loki listened, He Who Remains delivered a long rambling tale about how he had managed to condense the multiverse into one sacred timeline after a multiversal war. He also created the Time Variance Authority to guard the timeline and ensure that no rogue variants from the multiversal war slipped through. Does your head hurt yet? What I'm trying to say here is that there is no one higher on the totem pole than He Who Remains. He literally created the timeline. Everything that has happened in the MCU so far was essentially decided by him, and while I don't love that detail, it also means that he is 100% the most powerful character of not just Phase 4, but maybe also the entire MCU. He's not necessarily a villain per se, but his and the TVA's method of enforcing his rule over the timeline is so cruel that there's really no way he can be qualified as a hero either. In order to further prove his importance, the sacred timeline fractures into the multiverse as soon as He Who Remains dies in Loki's season 1 finale, opening the door for the events of What If, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness to take place. Oh, but don't worry though, an evil variant of him has already filled in his position and taken over the TVA. You might have heard of him, little someone called Kang the Conqueror? Yeah, we're all doomed. Hey everyone, I'm Matt Sonic, I made this video, and I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear what you think about my rankings, so let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of my placements. Make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe to CBR if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.